Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. I am your host, Rick Schooler. And on today's show, we will be speaking to Mr. Derrel Sims, aka the Alien Hunter. Derrel has approximately 40 years of experience, both in ufology and alien abduction phenomenon, alien implants, etc. And he's also part of the current television program Uncovering Aliens, which can be seen on both the Science Channel as well as the Animal Planet channel, if I'm not mistaken. So Derrel will be here to talk to us about those subjects, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts and theories, simply because of the amount of experience he does have. And I'm sure he'll be able to provide some additional information as well. All right, we will be back in just 1 minute with Mr. Derrel Sims. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hey, Mom. Yes, you. Why fuss and fret about dinner? Why not have it right here? Yes, this drive-in offers everyone in the family a real picnic treat for dinner. We've got delicious sandwiches with all the trimmings and your other dinner favorites, plus whatever you want to drink, hot or cold. Come early before the show starts, or eat while you're being entertained, or at intermission time. So why fuss? Give your family a tasty dinner at this drive-in.
Welcome back, everyone. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and bring on our guest for the evening, Mr. Derrel Sims. Derrel, are you out there, sir?
I am glad to be here tonight.
Hey, Derrel, I tell you, I'm always fascinated when somebody has so much background in ufology. You're looking at what, almost 4 decades of being involved in this?
You're making me older than I feel. That is correct, sir.
And another thing that I find fascinating, and something that we talk about often on this show, is the fact of these visitations that seem to come at a very young age, right around the 4 to 5 years of age. And you have that as well, correct?
That is correct, sir. My event started when I was about 4 years old in Midland, Texas. My mother was stunned when I explained this to her one night. She says, "Well, that's impossible." I said, "Mom," she said, "you can't remember that." And I said, "Mom, we lived on 1005 South K Street in Midland, Texas. You want to know the phone number?"
Well, the question that we often talk about here is, why is it this 4 to 5 year old range that keeps coming back up? Do you think that has any significance, or do you think that's just because as human beings that's as far back as we can remember?
In my opinion, and based on 40 years of work, my assessment is that one of the best times to begin programming someone is when they're quite young. And when you do this, that causes the individual to be very malleable, very believing. Children tend to buy into what they perceive as an adult or someone that's over them to be an authority. And once that program begins, they literally are at the behest of their captor.
I understand. I've never heard anybody explain it that way, but it makes complete sense. Now, Derrel, I'm sure most of our viewers either have heard of you, know you quite well, have seen you on television. Your latest show on Uncovering Aliens, which was on, I guess it's still on right now, right? It was in January.
Yes, sir. It's all over it's still running all the time. I don't know why they just keep putting it on all the time. I get calls from people all the time on the show.
You have, I guess, proclaimed that Earth is some type of farm planet. Is that correct?
Well, it is for them. It's not for us. For us, it's home. For them, it's a place of experimentation that they're doing and it's various things, most of which we're kept in the dark on, literally. In fact, these so-called beings of light do their work at night, in the late night, often with children, on up to people who have already been programmed and working that program, many of them unaware. We call them abductees or contactees. And these people, in effect, sometimes even resist the program, sometimes fight it. Certain others fall in love with it. I call the contactees, or the people who like the beings, they think they're here to save the planet, fix the ozone hole and all that, nothing of which they've done in the last 6,000 years. And the other people, the abductees like myself, know they've been abducted. It's a crime. It's called kidnapping, where we come from in Texas. We're a little more clear about that. And I call these people the killer bees, because they will not take it, so to speak. If you come to steal the honey from a honeybee, they'll sit there and think the funny little man in a white suit is here to help us, and he's stealing our honey because he's supposed to. They don't know he's not supposed to be doing that. And the killer bees, abductees like me, when they see the little funny man in the white suit coming, he's going to be in a lot of trouble if they can do something about it.
You said that your first visitation or abduction, I'm not sure what it was, at around age 4. Did you have subsequent visitations after that?
I did. The subsequent, I had about 10 events from age 4 to age 13. And this ended, my events ended at age 17 violently one night. An event that where 5 entities came into the room, did not wake up any of my family, broke the door, and the doorknob was laying on the floor, literally. The next morning, no one heard it. I was the only one that was wide awake and experienced the event. I ended up with broken ribs. That the best way to say that is that my VA primary care physician found my broken ribs, told me about them, and I told him I couldn't have any, but it's impossible, because if you had broken ribs, you'd know it. And he said, yeah, you wouldn't even be able to hardly breathe. And I said, that's true. So why do I not know I had broken ribs? But on my x-rays, you'll clearly see that there were broken ribs there.
So why did this particular visitation get violent? Was it because you were resisting?
Well, I think many abductees do resist. Most of the time, the entities will simply override your consciousness, and basically you'll knock you out, and they'll just do whatever it is they're going to do. But what most abductees and contactees don't know is that you can override that if you know how to do it. You just simply have to train yourself. I figured this out at age 4, when the entity in my room the last thing he tried to do when he was leaving was try to make me forget the whole event, and the only thing I would remember, he changed his image into that of a horrific clown, and I kept shaking my head back and forth, no, because I wanted to remember him for what he was, not for what he wanted me to think he was.
What are they doing here? What are these entities doing here? Are they? You mentioned this farm planet experimentation on humans. Have you found out that they are from a certain area in the universe? Are they multidimensional? Do they come from inner Earth? What's up with all that?
That whole question is the question that I'm answering in my next book called Hierarchy, which goes into the full explanation of that. I'll try to give your audience a thumbnail sketch of what I think, and you have to realize there are many theories out there by all these different people.
Right.
And those theories are a dime a dozen, and so is mine if I give you a theory. But whenever we have evidence to point to that, because I'm a former police officer in the military for 3 years, and worked in Central Intelligence Agency in covert operations for 2 years, been a private investigator for 30 years, still prosecuting felony crimes, like 42 of them in the last 3.5 years. My point being is that I have an investigator background. So I take off my UFO hat, which kind of is all excited about everything in the world and can be fooled real easily. And my UFO hat gets fooled just like anybody else's. People fake things and lie and all kinds of stuff, or they misidentify it. But the fact is, when I put my cop hat on, the world changes for me radically. It believes very little, and it's looking for mistakes and all kinds of things. So when I start looking for evidence in the question, who are they or why are they here? my answers right now, after 40 years of investigation, have become pretty sharp, and it alarms some people because they realize that I'm not making this stuff up to sell a book. That's not my purpose. The entities, in my opinion, all the entities, even let me frame this a little differently. If the question is asked, how many alien races are probably visiting planet Earth? In my opinion, probably none.
None.
And of course, the question comes back, well, but they're here. And I said, well, of course they are. But these aliens are from whatever, Banlon. I said, Banlon's a cloth. I mean, or a planet band that they claim to be from. That's a deodorant. What are you talking about? I said, they're messing with your consciousness. I said, what you have to do is take off your UFO hat, not be overwhelmed by them or their stories or whatever, and simply look at evidence. Evidence like this. When you look at the entities, all 7 of them lined up, there's 7, some people call them the 7 races that are visiting planet Earth. I said, they're not races, they're models. It's like going to the Chevy company and looking at the Corvettes and other models all the way down to the Impala. You're looking at models, you're not looking at races of beings from anywhere. I said, first of all, look at the obvious. The obvious thing is one of the entities is a human being that some people call the Nordic. The fact is he's a being that looks very human. A little bit different, but quite. The question is, where did somebody get that DNA to make him?
True.
Number 2 is if there's another being called a reptile or reptilian, where would you get reptile DNA? You're not going to get it probably from Mars or Jupiter or some other star. You're probably going to get it planet Earth. The place to harvest the DNA you need to create the beings you need that you can call aliens is right here on Earth. So you get, well, what about the Bigfoot? The Bigfoot guy has actually DNA work's been done on recently, and they found that he is 2 things. One, he is obviously an ape-like creature, simian. And the other thing they found, which is rather startling, but is consistent with my thesis, is that his DNA is modern human being, not Neanderthal, not Cro-Magnon, but modern man. Somebody has created, manufactured, hatched, or cloned, or made this thing and placed it on Earth for a period of time. And he is, in fact, part of the DNA that you and I are. So, and it goes on and on and on. But the DNA of the beings comes from Earth.
So what you're saying, Derrel, is pretty much Earth is like this giant petri dish that these, whatever they are using to stir up their different experiments and coming up with different forms of life or models of life, is it?
Well, someone is, and it's not the alien. The one we'll refer to the alien is the 7 primary creatures, the Greys, Doctor type, and the mantis being and so on. Again, where do you get mantis DNA? Probably not from Jupiter or any other place out there. You're probably going to get it on planet Earth. Someone came here long ago, got the DNA from these various creatures, and they took them back, the DNA, let's say back to a craft here. And I'll use this because I can actually back up some of what I'm saying here, but for brevity, we'll just give you the short version. So we got the DNA of these 7 different things, took it out to the big craft, so to speak, a very large one, and this is where they do their operations. It is just surrealistic. And the entities then are reintroduced back on Earth through various spacecraft, you can call them UFOs or whatever. These entities then come here, have their interactions with human beings, and of course they refer to themselves as aliens. The fact is the entities probably don't even know where they came from or what they are. And they're given a viewpoint that they are in fact entities from another planet, and they may even believe that. But I don't find any evidence that it's true.
Well, you said that these aliens may not know who they are, where they came from. That's pretty much like us humans, right?
Every time I go downtown and get lost, I figure that out.
I mean, how long have we been asking those 2 questions? Who are we and where are we from? I don't know. I don't think anybody has given the definitive answer yet. That's for sure. So what you're saying is there is some ultimate power to be that is over these 7 different types of aliens. You know, in a short explanation, so would this entity that's on top, that's creating these entities, how would you explain that entity? Is this some sort of master race, or what could it possibly be?
Well, there's two opinions primarily that you can think about. One of them goes back to a guy named Sitchin who wrote about this, and others did too. Did a lot of work in the area of the so-called Anunnaki, and Anunnaki were beings that according to ancient history came down from heaven, and that according to Sitchin came down from heaven and earth, and then they basically subjected human beings to slavery is what it amounted to. That's the ancient record. However, if you go back to a better record, in my opinion, which is a biblical record, you can find the same story, but it has a little bit more better definition. And it doesn't say they came down from the heaven. It says they were kicked out of heaven. In fact, the ancient writing actually states that they were kicked out, thrown out, ran out, any way you want to call it. They were not invited anymore to stay there. And whoever they were, that some people refer to them as fallen angels. Some people say they're the Anunnaki. But the fact is, whoever they are came to Earth many years ago in ancient times, and they did a number of things on Earth that created some real problems for heaven, for where they came from, and also from people on Earth. They are the progenitors of the giants in ancient history. A fact that the skulls and some of the bones and things have actually been noted and seen by people, and even in history, the Jewish general historian in the Roman times, in the days of Jesus, literally stated that the bones of the giants could still be seen in his day in the Valley of Rapha.
Wow.
So they were responsible for that too. A lot of genetic engineering went on all through history, and the alien is simply part of that program to present them to us as if they were from other worlds, and to basically get you to do whatever it is they need done or want to do.
Wow, strange stuff. I tell you, every time I think I've got my hands around this subject, I talk to someone like you, and now the subject just goes deeper and deeper.
My wife tells me there's nobody like me. I don't know whether it's a compliment or not.
Well, if she's still with you, Derrel, it's probably a compliment. So,
44 years.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Yes, sir.
So, Derrel, I'd like to switch gears here just a second and ask you about something you did back in 1994, where you were invited to speak at an American Medical Association conference.
Yes.
Now, how did that come about? Having a alien hunter at a medical conference just
Yes.
seems a little bizarre to me. So how did that all come about? What did you talk about? What was their response?
Glad to speak about it. My first answer to that is I was speaking at a conference this was in Atlanta. And while I was there, I got a phone call from Dr. Lipson, a doctor who owns a couple medical facilities at the time, a friend of mine. And he says, Derrel, how'd you like to speak to an AMA-sponsored program for continuing education for doctors, surgeons, and so on, about 250 of them? I said, absolutely, yes. And he said, okay, I'll set it up. What's the title of your presentation? I mean, it happened this fast. And I said, give me a second. Oh, medical complications of alleged human alien contact, implants.
Wow.
So I did a medical presentation, 250 of these surgeons, and they're sitting there, I mean, literally aghast. They just did not know what to do. They were so stunned with the evidence that I did give. After the event was over, 3 of them came aboard to offer assistance.
That's amazing. That really is. Now, I know, recently we just lost Dr. Lear, of course, who did a lot of implant surgeries and stuff like that. Have you found pretty much the same, or come to the same conclusion and found the same type of, excuse me, evidence with these implants that Dr. Lear had?
Not really.
Oh, really?
Dr. Lear, first of all, Lear was not an MD. He was a podiatrist. He was a foot doctor.
Right.
So he didn't remove a lot of these implants at all. He hired someone to do it, which I do. And so he did a couple of foot surgeries, but that's it. But anyway, he made some claims that were off the chart. Let me give the history real quick. I discovered implants in 1960 at age 12 because I was in the event consciously and got an implant myself. That's how I discovered it, not because of any brilliance, but simply because I was present. Number two is in the late 80s, I began to study implants very openly, and 1992 made an announcement about implants and the fact that we already had one, and people were like stunned. And then in 1994, I did my medical presentation where I made four major astounding statements about implants. What would happen if we do a surgery on one of these people with this medical evidence I'm showing, these x-rays and scans and so on, that certain things will be true. Those four things turned out to be absolutely true at the first surgery. I met a guy in California. His name was Roger Lear, and he did not believe in any of this stuff. He thought we were all nuts and crazy and all that. And his friend, Alice Levy, a really wonderful lady, begged him to come look at my evidence, and he looked at it. He still thought it was all nuts. And I paid for and flew two of the patients out to California, and he did a foot surgery on one, and we hired an MD, or he did, claimed it was an MD, came in and did the hand surgery. Long story short is the next morning when the pathology reports came in, he was absolutely, totally stunned. And he said, how in the world would you know all this stuff about implants when no one even knew they existed? You not only know they exist, but you give us four things that were medically impossible, and they were absolutely true when we removed the implants for the foot and the hand. And I said, you had to have been there. Anyway, Roger Lear, Roger Lear finally, after several years we were together, a number of clouds came up around him, and I kept asking him, have you ever had any medical problems with medical boards or anything? He kept telling me no. And I found out that, number one, that was not true. So some of our abductees claimed the implants were missing under his care, and that, of course, is anathema to me. Anyway, after the state of California came after him for malpractice, and in fact, the Attorney General showed up at that hearing, by the way, and I have a copy of the entire report, so I know what I'm talking about. I told him, you said, you told me this, and you weren't involved in any of that, and here you are, they're coming after you for malpractice, and they did, and they got him. And so anyway, I said, I want your resignation. I'm firing you right now. And he said, okay. And anyway, he went off and did his own thing for a while, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But he came up with a lot of conclusions that were off the charts. Nothing, to me, it was junk science at best. And I just could not agree with. The implants, first of all, are not tracking devices. They're not transponders. These devices that we've found actually, they indicate, because there's no real science to that yet. It indicates that some of these objects seem to have the ability to manipulate your neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, potassium. What that means to the average person is if somebody is in control of those neurotransmitters in you, they own you.
Yeah, it's like being on a drug, being controlled by a drug, right?
Yes, sir. It's they literally make you happy, sad, or whatever. The show is theirs. It's not yours.
Now, I remember one thing that I always found fascinating with something Dr. Lear said during one of his interviews is that they measured some type of frequency that came off these implants. I think it was like 14 point something megahertz or something. and that this frequency would stop once the implant was removed. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I can't speak to all of his stuff, and I had some of his patients actually come to me later, disenchanted with their own complaints and so on, and I won't. I'm not interested in trying to create a controversy, but the answer is that the headline that he pronounced many times simply was not provable. There was no science. In fact, when doctors, and I have some emails from doctors and scientists who asked very pointed questions about his claims, he never would address them or answer them. And that's really anathema to research. If you're doing this research and you've come to some conclusions and everything, you better produce the science for it, and not just I was alone in a room and had a little tiny Gauss meter and it seemed to go off really well. Well, those things tend to go off because of lights overhead, traffic, even some traffic that comes by, or anytime you get it near any other electrical equipment. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Depends on how sensitive it is. And the ones that he was using, I saw it. Anyway.
I'm sorry. I guess, I mean, we can say without a doubt that these implants do exist, right?
There's no question of that. They certainly do exist. We've done, I've done total with my medical team, I've done 24 surgeries to date, the last one being in Flint, Michigan last year. And some of the most amazing implants, period, I've ever seen. Like one of the claims that Roger made was all these implants are on the left side. Well, they're not. The implants that he studied that were on the left side were the cases that I gave him to look at. And he wrote that in a book. He later wrote a book and said, the only implants he ever saw were the ones that I showed him in my cases. And only several of those that he saw, implants were on the left side. But the fact is, the implants are on the left, right side, middle of the body, in the scrotum. They're in the genitalia. They can be in the head. On my book on implants, literally, there's one the size of a lifesaver inside this woman's skull on the X-ray.
Wow.
And 2 years later, it moves to the other hemisphere, the other side of the brain. And then one day it disappears. And now she's got one in her arm. If you go to my website, alienhunter.org, and click on, there's two videos there. One of them is an implant. A guy's got an implant in his finger at the Roswell Museum where I'm doing a presentation. And the other one is the lady with the implant in her head. Now she's got one in her arm. You can watch the video right there.
Now, one thing you do say on your website, Derrel, is that these implants are extremely rare.
That's true. I really get upset when I read on the internet about everybody that's been an alien abductee who's got an implant, and you need to, get your local psychic or whoever to check you out. That simply isn't true. I see hundreds of X-rays every year, and the vast majority of these do not have implants. They have an object there, and I assure you that we operate on all kinds of people, and you have to understand that I do this for free. I do this every bit of the work I've done in the alien abduction world has been absolutely free. Our work is philanthropic. I don't have a lot of money, but what I have, I either spend my own or beg, borrow, and steal whatever I can from doctors or others, or universities, labs, wherever I can. And anyway, we just get it done any way we can if we feel the case is viable. And we're just not in the money making business. This is about real evidence. We're not after somebody's money.
Is there a certain type of person, a certain type of personality that seems to get these implants more than others? And besides this controlling of internal body chemical, is there anything else that these implants are doing?
The first year that I reported an implant was 1992. I knew of implants before this, but I kept it quiet because I wanted to be sure. When you make this kind of statement, everybody's going to come after you, so you have to be very careful. I I made a first public announcement about that 1992 about an ocular implant that we had from a mass abduction of 8 people and from 2 states and several cities. And an amazing, incredible story. But the bottom line is this implant fell out of the lady's eye the next day at work. And we have it. And the point is that the object appeared to be about the size of a grain of sand, and it has in my view, had it was a casing for a biological camera. It was attached to her optic nerve. Anyway, that seemed to be the case, and everything that she said indicated that as well. And so that one wouldn't be there to monitor; it'd be there to spy on other people. At a meeting she was at, by the way, it was a double mass abduction. It happened on December 8th, 1992, and they came back and got him again. They were going to do a number of things, I guess, to them again. The same group of people in 2 states and several cities on December 11th, 1992. And they got the biological the biological camera out of it, but they forgot the container, and they lost it apparently. And she rubbed her eye the next morning. It fell out on her desk the next morning at work, and her boss saw it, and that's how I retrieved it. But this is 2 years before I ever met Roger Lear.
So these could be multi-purpose devices, right? You think?
The implants are some of them are multiple purpose, and some of them are very specific. I have a little girl that had 4 little gold spheres in her nasal passage, and her mother had gone to at a conference where a presentation where I was doing, telling people how to look for evidence, and I said, if someone ever complains of something in the nasal passage, have them sneeze into a Kleenex if possible, and just see if there's anything you can find immediately. And she did with the little girl. After the little girl told her, Mommy, there's a strange little man with large black eyes came in my room and did something in my nose. And she found these 4 little gold spheres. And the mommy lost them. They were so small, they're about the size of a pinhead. And she dropped them in the carpet. But several weeks later, the entities came back and put 4 more in the little girl. And I have those 4. And they were studied at York University.
Now, was there some type of molecular makeup test done on these things? Any data that come back on that you can share what these things are made out of or consist of?
We found overall we found a number of things about implants. There are some implants that these particular 4 were made out of 51% gold and 49% silver. A metallurgist who is he's not an assistant metallurgist in the university. He was a tenured professor, and he said, "I'm going to replicate these. I'm going to make exact copies of them." And I said, "Go ahead if you can." And he was amazed he was not able to replicate them. He said, "I'm really amazed that I cannot replicate the surface and everything, the aspects of these 4 little spheres." And but we did find that out. The next thing we're going to do is send them off now to a lab to have them looked at to see if we can find out the signature of the metals. Each metal that you find on Earth has a signature. That just as an example, you say 212 gold has an atomic signature of 212 as an example for your audience. But if you look for gold and you find it on the moon as an example, or in the meteorite, which there is a huge meteorite there full of gold out there, if you found gold there, it is highly likely it's not going to be from here, and it will have a different signature even though it is gold. That's how we know meteorites come from outer space, or a rock that we found in Antarctica came from space, because we've already been to Mars and we found the signature of the metals there, and the meteorite they found in Antarctica, it had the same exact signature. So we know that meteorite literally came from Mars.
Oh, wow. That's amazing stuff. Amazing. Well, listen, we're getting down here on time, Derrel, but I wanted to talk a little bit, if we could, about the television show, Uncovering Aliens. I really liked the show. One of the reasons is I thought the team that you guys put together was really good. I love the way they interact. But you know what? There's one thing I could tell about you before I'd even met or talked to you, just by watching that TV show, is you take this subject very seriously.
One of my abductees described me when I was talking to someone else about me that was interviewing him. He said, "What do you think of this guy? Is real or not?" And he said, "That guy's serious as a heart attack." Yeah. Don't you even kid yourself? And I am, and I appreciate your comment there. But the fact is that I am an investigator. I have a policing background. I'm not a journalist per se. I'm not. There's a lot of things I'm not, but one of the things I am is an investigator. And if it's real or if it's not real, and I'm on the case, I'm going to find out what it is, and somebody better be telling me the truth.
Now, are there plans to do more episodes of Uncovering Aliens?
Thank you for asking. They've just renewed my contract, and the other stars of the show, the four of us total, and there appear to be 6 to 8 more shows that are going to be done.
Excellent. Well, like I said, I just thought the whole team structure just played very well. The gentleman from, is he from the UK, I believe?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, now what's his story? Because I'm not too familiar with him. What's his background?
He's a contactee, and they like to push this. He's a contactee, meaning he thinks that they're here to save the planet, fix the ozone hole, and do wonderful things for mankind. And they're probably upgrading our DNA and doing all kinds of neat things for us that they don't want us to know about, but it's good for you. So just kind of like the government. We're taking care of you. Anytime the government knocks on my door and said, "We're from the government here to help you," I'm sorry, I have a problem with that. They haven't helped anybody yet.
Now,
So,
how did they come up with that team? How was that team constructed? Did you put it together? Did the producers handpick these people, or what?
There were 7 of us originally that were flown to the United Kingdom, to England, and then after they interviewed us very carefully and ran us through a lot of tests and see what we really know and what we really didn't know and so on, then they took us to the United States to work on a case in Upper New York State, very fascinating and a good case. And after that, then they made their decision. From the 7 people, it would be these 4. And so that's how we all came to be. And one of them, like I say, is a contactee. Stephen is the contactee. He's a really good guy. And but he and I philosophically are just as far apart as one university is from another.
Yeah, and you can tell that. You can tell that on the show.
He's a lovely guy. Well, they love that interaction. I'm an abductee. And I remember what happened to me, and I don't think that he does.
I just great group. So I'm glad to hear that there's more shows, more episodes coming. Derrel, is there anything else? I know you brought up your website, which is alienhunter.org. What about any, I believe you have something coming up later in the year, don't you? Some type of MUFON event?
Yeah, that's correct. I have a MUFON conference, and if you'll go to my website, alienhunter.org, you'll be able to see we got several things to add. I've got a MUFON conference in Pennsylvania I'll be speaking at in the latter part of the year. In September, I'll be going to Canada, speaking up there. I'll be there speaking with several other speakers. Travis Walton and I will be the headliners for that conference. And I've got another conference I'll be speaking at as well. But all that will be posted on the website very quickly. We had a few difficulties, glitches on the site, and they're working on that now. And one of the things that is interesting to people, if you're an audience, if you have an interest in looking for evidence and you don't have an investigative background like me, or if you do, you want to investigate the alien thing, I have a book called alienhunter.org, Alien Hunter, The Evidence in Light. And that book is basically a story of my life and how I became the alien hunter and how I found evidence and how you can find it. If you follow that book and follow each chapter, you'll be fascinated with the things you find in it. One ex-intelligence guy said it scared the hell out of me. But the fact is, it's not meant to scare people. It's meant to show you what happens, what's real, and that you can find evidence, that there is evidence we found on abductees and around abductees. And it's people just don't know how to look for it. If you use that book, you can do that. It's a lot of fun.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Derrel, thanks again for taking time out of your day to visit with us. I found it a fascinating conversation. good luck on the TV show and the speaking engagements and the books. It sounds like you got enough to keep you busy for a while.
It does indeed. And I thank you so much. You've been a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you for bringing me on.
All right, Derrel. Well, thanks very much, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Open the door, you'll find the secret. To find the answer is to keep it. You'll believe it when you find something screaming across your mind. Green slime.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. I am your host, Rick Schooler. And on today's show, we will be speaking to Mr. Derrel Sims, a.k.a. the Alien Hunter. Derrel has approximately 40 years of experience, both in ufology and alien abduction phenomenon, alien implants, etc. And he's also part of the current television program Uncovering.
A real picnic treat for dinner. We've got delicious sandwiches with all the trimmings and your other dinner favorites, plus whatever you want to drink, hot or cold. Come early before the show starts, or eat while you're being entertained, or at intermission time. So why fuss? Give your family a tasty dinner at this drive-in.
Welcome back, everyone. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and bring on our guest for the evening, Mr. Derrel Sims. Derrel, are you out there, sir?
I am glad to be here tonight.
Hey, Derrel, I tell you, I'm always fascinated when somebody has so much background in ufology. You're looking at what, almost 4 decades of being involved in this?
You're making me older than I feel.
Aliens, which can be seen on both the Science Channel as well as the Animal Planet channel, if I'm not mistaken. So Derrel will be here to talk to us about those subjects, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts and theories, simply because of the amount of experience he does have. And I'm sure he'll be able to provide some additional information as well. All right, we will be back in just 1 minute with Mr. Derrel Sims. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hey, Mom. Yes, you. Why fuss and fret about dinner? Why not have it right here? Yes, this drive-in offers everyone in the family.
That is correct, sir.
And another thing that I find fascinating, and something that we talk about often on this show, is the fact of these visitations that seem to come at a very young age, right around the 4 to 5 years of age. And you have that as well, correct?
That is correct, sir. My event started when I was about 4 years old in Midland, Texas. My mother was stunned when I explained this to her one night. she says, well, that's impossible. I said, Mom, she said, you can't remember that. And I said, Mom, we lived on 1005 South K Street in Midland, Texas. You want to know the phone number?